We are going to kick off with our first panel. Panelists are here. At the center of change, what customs brokers need to know to navigate bonds, risks, and policy. Joining us are Cindy Allen, Colleen Clark, and Patrice Lafayette. And moderating the session is Eric Wilsgard. Eric, you can take it away.
All right, thanks, Jason. Well, I guess we all know that things are very uncertain at the moment and a little tumultuous, so this is probably very beneficial to many of you, we hope. I guess we can just start things off with that question to Cindy. Where are we at right now in this uncertain trade environment, if that's one word for it?
Yeah, I think we all keep saying uncertain, uncertain, uncertain. And really, I think everyone is past the point of looking for predictability. I think what we know now is it's going to continue to be unpredictable. We're going to continue to have rapid amount of change. We're going to continue to see, highs, lows, changes that occur overnight based on what seems to be whims of a few people that are making the decisions at the White House. And for customs brokers and importers, what we really want is information. Okay, so now we know we have an action. How do we implement that? We need more information. And I think one of the big challenges that we've all had is that something comes out overnight, it's effective in 24 hours or 48 hours, or as the tariffs, they're implemented in a week that were just recently announced. How do we implement those? And that's the big frustration. I think we've all gotten to that point where, okay, change is going to happen. This is the new normal. The constant change is the new normal. So what do we do now? And I think that, I talk about the tariff stages of grief, because it really does mirror the stages of grief. There's disbelief. We can't believe this is happening, especially those of us who have been in the industry for 35 years plus, like I have. It's disbelief. There's the amount of change that's happened in this administration in the first 6 months kind of equates to my 35-year career. I'm not seeing it like this in any 1 year or any 1 decade even. So the amount of change. So we're all just in disbelief. And then we move to the anguish and pain. I can't believe this is happening. There's so much pain. I have so much work. How am I supposed to implement all of these? So that's the anguish and pain that we feel. And then we go to the anger. How am I supposed to be able to do this? I can't do this. This is too much. I only have so much capacity. We only have so many people to take care of those. So you get that anger that you can't control the situation. And then you eventually move into begrudging acceptance. Okay, this is where we are. What do I need to do? How do I need to structure my environment? How do I need to operate in this new environment? So what do I need to do if this is how things are going to be? And as customs brokers, we really need to hold our importers' hands, because they're going through this as well. Customs brokers have to implement all of these changes, but they also have to explain to their importers what's happening, because obviously importers hire us customs brokers to explain things and to do the day-to-day work. And so they don't always have the tools to be able to explain that, especially if they're explaining that to their CEOs or their management. So we play a couple of roles here as customs brokers. Holding hands is a big part of that, and explaining in clear terms to our clients what's happening and how it affects them. So I think we're all in that, kind of begrudging acceptance now.
Yeah, that's a good, well, it's grim, but yeah, it's true. There are other stages. We see it with our broker clients. It's vicarious. They have to explain it to the importers. And I know everyone out there internally, I mean, that's a struggle, because we have a second degree of having to explain this process in a rush when it's complicated. So everybody has a really hard time with that. That being said, what can we do when we don't have this advance notice, when this just happens so quickly? How can we be proactive as brokers, as importers?
So a couple of things. One, I'm a big supporter of NCBFAA, especially for customs brokers. The Customs Committee has done fantastic work of putting out information. And the next panel will include one of the key components of the Customs Committee, Lenny Feldman, who's the counsel. They have done a lot of work to put information out on how to implement. And in this environment, customs is not as friendly to the trade as what we've seen in the past. And so it helps to have a select group of individuals that represent your industry that can go meet with customs that they're willing to talk with to actually get the guidance, because they don't want to talk with all, active 3,000 customs brokers. They'll talk to 3 or 4 people who can then take that information and then send it out in a manner that the customs brokers can utilize. Also, we've seen a lot of importers get more involved in their transactions over the years. Before they would completely leave that to their customs broker. Now they have to get a little bit more hands-on. So we're seeing a lot of that information make its way to other trade associations. If you are not a customs broker and you're an importer, look to the trade associations that you're dealing with and look to them for guidance on how these tariffs are actually going to impact your industry, because I think that is really important. Look to your partners. If you're an importer, your customs brokers. If you are a customs broker, look to, Roanoke, because they're a great partner. They have information, they have insight, they have the ability to help you navigate what you're going through right now. But at a higher level, I think what we're seeing is, know your supply chain, know your value chain. So what's the difference? The supply chain is really how goods move. And we saw that understanding of needing to know the supply chain after 9/11. When 9/11 came on, you needed to know how your goods were moving and who was handling your goods and who you were doing business with. And we've kind of all got that down. Now, in this new environment, you need to know your value chain, and the value chain is what is moving on that supply chain. So what are the goods? What are the components of those goods? How is that product being made at which stage in which country? So understanding that data all the way back to the origin of the raw materials is where we're all going, whether we want to or not. We saw that first with the anti-dumping duty, where you had anti-dumping duty on component materials, like the tubular pipe was one of the first ADD cases that had a component element to the anti-dumping duty case. And so suddenly, makers of ATVs had to know where the roll bar was made and what the component was, because anti-dumping duty was placed on that. So that was the first kind of component level action. And then we saw derivatives, steel and aluminum derivatives. It's not just on the Section 232s and 301s. It's not just on the product. It's on anything that contains that product. So we have to know, and who knows what's going to come out in the future, and who knows what this tariff transshipment definition is, but we have to know the component materials. So how do you do that? If you're a customs broker, you're of course gonna ask your importers, give me that information. Couple of issues with that. One, you may not have that information. And if you do have that information, how do you get it to your customs broker so that they can then take it into their systems and they can file the entries correctly? So customs brokers have to look at their own systems and say, do I have a way to capture this information and record it so that I can make appropriate decisions moving forward? So that's the first thing. The second thing is you need to understand, the importers need to understand how to get that information all the way down. There's lots of systems out there that do that now. We can thank the forced labor actions for that, because forced labor, you needed to know who made all of your products all the way down if you were subject to forced labor or not. And CBP put a lot of money behind the systems that actually collect that information. So they have capabilities now that can go all the way down to the raw materials. Many of those, almost all of them, are available in a commercial atmosphere. So you can go buy the same systems that CBP is using. Now, you likely aren't going to buy all 5 that they are using, but you can evaluate which of those 5 or 6 actually work best in your supply chain. But you can have that visibility. And I'm a big proponent of understanding what CBP has. You know, when I was at ACE, I made sure that the portal had visibility for imports and exports to make sure that importers and customs brokers had visibility into the information that CBP has. So now we've gone beyond ACE. We've gone beyond that capability into these supply chain and value chain systems. Customs has those. You probably should too. And if you're a customs broker, guess what? Partner with one of these technology companies that can then, you can resell it to your customers. You can offer this as a service to your clients. Just like I remember ISF came out and, you know, that many, in excess of 90 some percent of all ISFs are filed by customs brokers. It's a service offering. This is an opportunity for customs brokers. And if you look at this in the right way, you can offer those to your clients because they're going to need it sooner rather than later, especially as CBP has become much more enforcement minded. Why? Because they've collected 30 years of ACE data, and they used to have to take that down, put it on a spreadsheet, look at it, have a couple people, you know, gather around, try to figure out, look for patterns, look for things like that. Now they have AI that does that for them, and it spits out the pattern and it spits out the anomalies. So they can then focus their attention not on the analysis part, but on the enforcement and making sure that information is accurate. So we're seeing higher levels of enforcement across the board. We're also seeing them be more targeted in what they're going after because they have better analysis to do that.
Very good answer. A lot to unpack there. I mean, yeah, seeing a value add is always beneficial. I mean, that's a good thing to share. You know, I like that you touched on teamwork. You know, there is a teamwork bond here between us and the broker, the importer. It's very important, especially right now. You know, we urge our brokers to communicate. I mean, it's not our place, but work with your importers. A lot of times importers are naive and they don't really truly understand the ramifications of some of the things that they're doing, and that gets them into trouble. So, you know, that teamwork aspect is something I always push with our clients, and I think is very important, especially right now. That being said, higher tariffs, obviously, we're going to see insufficient bonds. How do you see that? What are we doing with all of these, you know, enormous amount of mandated increases every month?
Speaking of enforcement, as everybody knows, Customs does a monthly review of every continuous import bond that's on file. They look back 12 months and issue insufficiency notices. We have the statistics for the first 7 months of 2025, and it's already doubled the entire year of 24. It's actually tripled 7 months to 7 months, 24 to 25. So we've seen this uptick, and we're going to see more, right, with the new tariffs that are coming in this week, August 7th. So we'll expect to see more insufficiencies starting next month, I imagine, in September. We will get our monthly reviews this week from Customs, and we're not even finished with getting all of the insufficiencies completed
Right.
for last month. So it's definitely having a huge impact on importer bonds. We're seeing many bonds at greater than 30 million. In the past, there were around 40, and it's already doubled since December 24. So in 7 months, that number of mega bonds has doubled. Some people were asking about the surety's ability to write these very big bonds. Sureties have what's called a treasury limit, is 10% of the net worth of the surety company, and they can only file a bond up to that amount. Roanoke has many surety partners to have the capability to be able to write these very large bonds. Customs accepts reinsurance as well as co-surety bonds. So for these mega bonds, we've filed a few really big bonds. And Patrice, do you remember the biggest bond we were?
Yeah, the biggest bond we've written is $1 billion, and it's not a joke. It's not definitely a B. Something we've never heard of or done before. And I'd say not just in addition to large bonds, we're seeing a lot of small bonds with insufficiencies. About half of our insufficiencies have been under 100,000. And I just think that's due to people not trying to forecast or not trying to really look at their supply chain to figure out what a bond amount should be. I'm sure you've all heard us talk for a very long time about aggregate and stacking liability, but that causes issues with underwriting, of course. The other thing we've seen a really big increase on is foreign importers and new bonds. I know we're going to talk a little bit about later with Type 86, but some of that I think is due to having to file Type 01 entries and needing an import bond. But we're also seeing importers go from a surety company, get a mandated increase, and then not comply with it, and then get a $50,000 bond with another surety company. At the time, Customs has not caught a lot of this. So as a customs broker, I think it's really important as you're working with your importer to vet them and make sure where they're coming from, make sure they don't have a history. You know, a lot of, I know Colleen's going to talk about this a little bit too, but a lot of them aren't necessarily have a customs assigned number. They have a domestic IRS number, but they're still a foreign company. And we're seeing a lot of them start up mostly in Colorado. There's companies that you can pay to do this. So there are importers out there trying to find a way. And, you know, unfortunately, I think sometimes it's going to lead into claims as we go down the road.
Yeah, and because the enforcement factor with Customs, they are looking, you know, they're searching out these importers and these companies that are shell companies as well. As far as the mandated increases that come in $10,000 increments, so you have a $50,000 bond, Customs sends a notice and says get a 60. Don't even bother with 60. Go right to 100,000. Because you know that's only, you know, a month of the higher duties. So it's best to be proactive and forget about those 10,000 increments. You might as well go right to 100,000. In fact, the surety industry, we have our association as well as a coalition. We're all competitors, but we call ourselves, we're small but mighty, right? There's not very many sureties that write customs bonds. So, you know, together we meet with Customs and we have made the recommendation that they just forget about even issuing a mandated increase. If it's in 10,000, go to 100, make your letter 100,000, because that will avoid that stacking liability as well.
Essentially 100 is just the new minimum. I mean,
Well,
it wouldn't hurt.
and we were, Patrice and I were talking, $1 million bond is the new $200,000
Yeah.
bond, right? I mean, when you look at it,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's a lot to think about, especially when you weren't seeing duty before. You don't understand stacking. You don't understand a lot of these elements because you just didn't deal with it. You didn't see any duty. You know, everything went just fine, and now you're having to comprehend that. And not only that, but you're now behind because you've now probably gotten into some stacking. And those are the effects that this has long term that you have to think about while you're importing. But it's just coming at you left and right now. So next question for the group: what hurdles are importers facing with these higher bond amounts related to underwriting? Obviously, a big part of underwriting.
Yeah, I think there's a couple different things. I mean, there's a time element to a mandated increase, and that time element is not long. You have to file a termination within 30 days and give Customs 15 days notice. So as long as that seems, when you start getting into reviewing financials, reviewing with your importer the bond amount, possibly looking at collateral, that's the time delays that we are seeing right now. This happened, you know, before with the first set of tariffs many years ago. Collateral has always been an issue with the banks. The banks aren't prepared to issue this many letters of credit. Lately, we've been seeing 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes even 8 weeks for an importer to get a letter of credit. And it's not because they can't qualify, it's just simply the bank can't process it in time. So we always say to be proactive, but being proactive in underwriting is a very big deal right now. Not only I'm sure the customs brokers are inundated with work and you guys have a lot going on, but so do the surety companies and the underwriters. So there is a human element of reviewing financials as well. And that takes time. So I think one of the biggest things to really get ahead of is to work with your importers and work with your local Roanoke bond team and work on getting what they would need for a certain bond amount. And even if you're looking at a couple of them, maybe you're looking at 200,000, 500,000, and $1 million, looking at a couple different options so that when that importer comes in and makes that decision, you already have your answer.
Yeah, and there's the old saying, don't be penny wise and pound foolish. And that's what, an importer would do if they're going just for that minimum bond amount that's required based on the past. You got to really forecast into the future. Which Cindy, can you add something into that? I mean, how can importers really forecast, not knowing, I mean, there's changes constantly right now.
Well, I think that's one of the things where a customs broker really provides a lot of value is they have the ability to look at what they've paid in the past and then try to calculate what the new tariffs are going to do to their imports. A lot of companies can get some of that information from ACE, but typically what I find is most brokers' systems have more information at this point than ACE does. So I always recommend that the importers take their broker data and marry that with the ACE data. Or some brokers will do that on the importer's behalf, marry that data and really understand what the importer is actually bringing in, and then project that against what is going to happen with these tariffs, especially as we're seeing them, in 2 days, they're going to increase for a large majority of the imports. So you have to be proactive. And I know a lot of companies are reaching out to customs brokers saying, what does this mean? Yeah, you need to have that. Okay, this is what you're going to pay in duty, but a good broker will also think, okay, and this is what it's going to do to your bond. So let's get ahead of that. And let's make sure that we have a bond in place before, or all of the supporting information. Let's get your letter of credit. Let's know exactly what you're going to need to increase your bond before you get that letter. And you can do that with the data that's out there. There are some tools now that I've seen, technology tools, that do help customs brokers project that for clients. So that's really good. That's a good tool to use, or, it's not that difficult to calculate it. So those who don't have a tool can do that manually, but that's a great opportunity for customs brokers to provide value to your clients and make sure that you're giving them the right information to be successful moving forward, because you don't want to be in that situation where you are a customs broker, you get that insufficiency letter, they can't get that letter of credit, because they're going to need one, or collateral, and they're out 6 weeks. Now you are stuck helping your client pay demurrage and detention fees because they probably have stuff on the water that's coming in or being flown in, and now you're having to arrange that. So it just becomes much more costly for you and for your importers, because although customs brokers, we are in business to make money and we can help you do that. But there comes a tipping point where if all of the importers are being impacted and you don't have enough manpower to just keep up with everything. So you want to make it as smooth as possible for your importers. So be proactive. Be proactive and start looking who is close to a bond limit. And you can reach out to the surety. You can reach out to Roanoke and say, hey, give me a snapshot of my top 50 clients and let me know how close they are to their bond sufficiency, so I know who I need to reach out to. And it's a great opportunity for you as customs brokers to go visit your client or reach out to them. You have a reason to do that. And I know, a lot of companies are looking for reasons to reach out to their clients. But this is a fantastic, hey, let me be proactive and have a conversation about your bond with you.
Proactive, I think, is the word of the day when it comes to bonds
Yeah.
right now.
And we have those reports that you mentioned, right? So any broker can go in and using our system to be able to obtain those sufficiency reviews based on the ASI data, the automated surety interface data that we receive from customs. I do want to just follow up on the collateral issue, just real quickly. Surety companies are in business to write bonds. It's not that they're, demanding collateral because they want to. I mean, there is a financial concern out there because of these high tariffs, and we need to protect the treasury limit of those surety companies. So at Roanoke, as a broker, we have authority for our main surety that we work with. So we do work with those underwriters directly. All of our bond people have some level of authority. And, you know, we work with the underwriters to get the best solution for our clients. It's not just automatically 100% collateral. You know, we do have subjective reviews, right? As far as all the bonds we write, we've been in business for 90 years. Granted, many of those clients we've had for 50 or 60 years, customs broker clients that are very long-term partners of Roanoke. So a lot of these bonds that we write, we've been writing for 30, 40 years.
Well, and collateral hasn't, sorry, Cindy, collateral hasn't been as much of, I mean, it's collateral, sometimes it seems like people have never.
People
heard the
expect
word.
it.
And, you know, it's like, what do you mean I need collateral? And then you're faced with, like you said, the time constraints of going to the bank and all that. And first of all, they don't understand why. And, you know,
Mhm.
when you're under the gun here, it's very hard to both explain all of this, put it all in place, and end up with a bond in 3.5 weeks. So again, the proactive thing here is really the push, and that's that relationship, back to that relationship with the brokers and us.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, as a customs broker and a business person, you also have to take a critical eye. These are your clients, but if they can't get collateral or they have a problem, not necessarily a timing issue, you know, if the bank is like, no problem, but it's going to take 6 weeks, that's one thing. But if they are struggling to get that collateral, you should look at that with a critical business eye, because if they can't get that collateral, how are they going to pay you for duty?
Right.
I'm a huge proponent of importers must go on their own ACH. Customs brokers have traditionally done that as a service. They've put it on their own statement. They've advanced the duty. They get that advancement fee that they can make off of that. But you have to look and say, is that advancement fee worth the duty that I am going to owe on that, or the importer is going to owe, and all the work I have to do if they default? So you have to look at that from a financial perspective as well. If they're having a problem getting collateral for a bond, let's take some proactive steps here, put them on their own ACH, make sure that you have tight credit lines, and that you aren't going to be out a bunch of money if they can't come up with that collateral. Because if they can't come up with that collateral, then they're effectively not able to import any
Right.
longer.
Right.
That's a really good point, Cindy. And I think that just kind of adding on to the collateral piece, financials are also something that a lot of importers aren't used to providing.
Right,
They've
yeah.
had a $50,000 bond or a $100,000 bond. So that's something else, you know, to be aware of. We like to see audited financials. Sometimes we can't. That's okay. But, you know, work with your teams and we can sign non-disclosure agreements, you know, so that they feel comfortable. They can send the financials directly to our underwriters. And like Colleen said, being subjective, you know, there is a level, if we've done business with a broker and the importer for a long time, there's a level that we can approve without looking at financials, you know, if there's a good history with the importer and the broker. So it's just a matter of, I know we keep talking about being proactive, but also being a partner with us and with your teams, because that's something that will help you with the importers. And in addition to our reports, we do have a page on our website that also gives you information of up-to-date stuff on the tariffs, as well as some marketing tools that you can provide to your importers to explain collateral or what financials are needed that you can even brand with your logo. So that's something we've tried to put out there to help you explain to your importers as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, all the tools that Roanoke can provide, we try to provide saturation reports and you know, things like that. Like, it seems small, but a lot of people are looking at those every day right now. You know, because they're fluctuating so much, and that's a good way to keep an eye on it. That does go to our next topic, which I think we sort of touched on, but is a tough one right now. It's a tough one for sureties to handle, and they're making sort of new rules, and it's a tough one for brokers to work with, and that's non-resident importers, foreign importers. Thoughts, actions, you know, 100% collateral in positions. How do you all feel about non-resident importers and going forward? How are we going to look at these and from all
Well,
directions?
I'll chime in first and say CBP has talked about getting rid of non-resident importers for years. So every time a tariff action comes up or an enforcement-oriented administration comes in, that's one of the first things they say is, why aren't these U.S. companies? How do we reach out and make sure that we can enforce a company that's, you know, a resident of another country. So they've been talking about getting rid of that for years. One of the things that has prohibited them from just moving forward with it is the number of Canadian importers of record. It's massive. There's a huge amount of Canadian non-resident importers. And before, the thought was maybe they'll do a carve out for USMCA. So, Mexican, although there aren't as many Mexican importers of record, there are tons of Canadian importer of record. But we've seen in this current environment, there's not necessarily deference to USMCA countries. Canada sits at 35% tariff rate now, minimum. So there's a huge disregard, I think, for that concern. So what's going to happen? It would push companies to have a legal residency here. And in a lot of other countries in the world, you can have a company that serves as the importer of record. That's really not available here. And a lot of international companies don't understand that. Well, can I hire an NRI company? It's like, that's not a thing here. You can't really do that. So what are their options? They'd have to establish legal companies here in the United States. What kind of information would be needed? Can I just get an IRS number? Because it's pretty easy to file for an IRS number, go into a state, establish an entity. But do I really have to have financial information in that company? So it's going to be much more complicated. But I think if I am a foreign importer of record, I want to start looking at what that looks like, because it's another hot topic that I'm hearing, little bits and pieces about them moving forward with that. So you may want to understand, as a customs broker, how many importers you have that are non-resident importers, and start looking for options. What are some options? Start talking to some of these companies. Hey, it might not happen, but let's have a plan in case it does. Let's make sure we have a plan. And then the other thing is, will customs brokers move into this space? Will they become an importer of record? There are some customs brokers who do that. Mainly the large couriers, just because of the way the freight moves, they'll serve as importer of record. I know of no other large customs broker or small customs broker that does that on a day-to-day basis. Why? Because the liability is way too high.
Always caution that.
Yep.
It's not really this.
Huge, but that's how it used to be. The brokers were the importers of record for so much. And it was not that common for an importer to get their own bond. It was only for bigger companies, and customs brokers acted as the importer of record for, small to medium-sized companies. Well, when the MADEC came out, we saw, companies understand they had that liability, and they started being more and more, it was more and more prevalent. And now that's the majority of the bonds are for importers themselves. But would this force customs brokers to then act as the importer of record? It might be, but I would want to say vetting clients, if you're going to do this, is critical.
Yeah.
You have to understand what liability you are taking on by doing this, because guess what? You're the importer of record. You are held liable, period. There is no such thing as I only act as an importer of record for release purposes or for this purpose.
Right.
That thinking has gone away. That was prevalent 20 years ago. That thinking has gone away. It's nowhere in the regs, nowhere in the law. So you are held liable like an importer. That means if there is a recall for FDA because you brought in an FDA product, guess who's on the hook for that?
Mhm.
For FDA.
Yeah.
So it goes down to that level. So just be careful if that's something that you're thinking, oh, well, we used to do this. Let's get into that business. Be very cautious. If you want to do that on, a temporary basis while you're trying to figure it out, that's one thing. But then make sure that you're vetting the clients you're doing that for, and also that they're financially viable. Maybe you want to get some sort of guarantee as a customs broker up front,
Yeah.
to do that, so that you have the ability to go back financially. And make sure you're charging for that. Don't just do it for free. We're in this for business purposes. So make sure that if you have a risk, you're getting compensated according to that risk that you have.
Just like broker statement. I mean, these are threats that are very real to brokers. Thankfully, brokers inherently are very cautious. But now when things come to a head, This is when mistakes are made, when people are busy, when we're rushed, when we're being pressed by the importers, and we got to keep diligent.
Well, Patrice mentioned the shell companies. We discovered, was it 100?
No one's ever been.
It was over 100, yeah.
Yeah, importers at the same address. Like, how is that possible, right?
Multiple times too.
So, we went in and dug into it and discovered that it was a registered agent address, that they were advertising how to become a legitimate company for $40 or something like that, and getting IRS numbers for these companies, and they were all, like ABC Trading LLC, the names like that, right? Trading companies or LLCs. So we dug into it a little bit and discovered, thank goodness we didn't have 100 bonds for all these, for every one of them. It was just in our system. We kind of queried by the address. So, we just discovered that they were really shell companies. And, so we're taking a look at that when we're finding these anomalies with multiple importers at the same address. And then Cindy, you mentioned vetting, right? Well, it is a requirement, right? In the new broker regulations that brokers do vet their importer clients. Yeah, so definitely pay attention to that, because you don't want to be penalized by customs for working with an importer that really is not a legitimate company at all.
Or not even just not an importer, but we've seen NVOCCs and freight forwarders that want to become the importer of record because their clients are having a hard time getting a bond. So really making sure, checking the address, Google them, look at their website, try to find out if they're a legit company, or what do they advertise that they do, because I've seen that a lot too, where you can tell it's a supplier or you can tell it's an NVOCC on the website.
Yeah. And our bond losses are much higher on non-resident importers too.
Yeah, that's where that technology, also understanding the supply chain, you can use that to ensure, that they're a real company, because they'll have connections to suppliers and have connections, upstream for their products. So some of that technology can also be wrapped around that if you're a broker.
Vetting is definitely another key. If there are a couple keywords today, vetting is definitely one. We've had a lot of inquiries about that, assistance, documentation, how to, especially with if people are broker hopping right now. It's just what's happening. Vetting is so crucial, and even though we're busy, it still has to be paid attention to. Another thing that I guess we didn't see coming, I suppose, is the de minimis and how that's about to change.
Yeah, so I like to separate de minimis as a clearance method. E-commerce is a way of selling, and e-commerce isn't going away. Goods are still coming in, maybe not at the levels as they were, but e-commerce is still coming in. I'm still ordering online. I know, the marketplaces, haven't gone out of business. They haven't stopped selling into the United States. 1.6 billion shipments a year last year came in on de minimis. While the volume isn't as high on a per package level, what we're seeing is it's still coming in. Those are just being consolidated into consolidated shipments, which CBP does not like at all. NCBFAA met with customs before any of this happened and said, look, you're going to do away with type 86. Right now, you have visibility on a package by package level, what is coming in, who it's coming from, and where it's going. Once type 86 goes away, if you do away with that in de minimis, you now are going to have 01 and 11 entries. You're going to have a company in the US being established, many of them legitimate, or they already had a established company in the US. It's going to be from that marketplace or that seller to the marketplace in the US. And they're going to come in as 01 shipments. You are going to get from that company to that company. You are not going to get the underlying information to target. And I don't think they really understood that. And now that de minimis has gone away in May for China, which was 75% of the de minimis clearance, went away. So CBP is struggling now how to target, because those shipments are still coming in. They're still individually packaged, but instead of a 900 line type 86 entry that showed every dress and every, blouse and every pair of pants, they're getting 3 lines. Here's all the dresses, here's all the pants, here's all the shirts. And it's a 3-line entry, same value, they're paying duty on that, but CBP doesn't have the visibility. So I'm expecting CBP actually quite quickly to issue new guidance on how consolidated e-commerce shipments are going to come out, which is going to require some additional information. But yeah, it's a huge issue. Also valuation. I'm getting lots of questions. How can we lower the value of the goods legally? I'm getting some questions on how to do that illegally, which is fraud. You know, it's like, this is all fraud. Don't do that. But I think that, you know, the structure of the transaction, reach out to a legal partner. I refer all of my clients to a legal firm. You know, here you need to go talk about how you can do this legally, because if it's found to be illegal, these are 999 line shipments and they're broken up and there's 10 of them on one aircraft. So if they find an issue with valuation, it's not just that one item that's going to have an issue. It's going to be all of the shipments that you're bringing in. And that's massive for some of these larger marketplaces. So it's a challenging industry right now, but there are ways to do it. And companies that partner again with a good customs broker have an advantage of those who have come in, established a customs broker that was only doing type 86. There are many customs brokers out there, much to my surprise, who only did type 86. That was all they've ever done. They have a license, they have a corporate license, they have a licensed customs broker, but they've never filed an O1 entry. They've never filed an 11 entry. They're struggling to understand what's required. So if you are in that boat or you have a client that's in that boat, you want to start looking at who are some of the established customs brokers that have this understanding, who maybe deal with e-commerce currently and can help ease that transition. And I think that a lot of companies are actually transitioning. And I do think we'll start seeing more volume coming. You know, everybody's looking, oh, that one's down, this one's down, that one's down, because they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure it out. But I think that it'll continue to increase because people still want to buy things online. And until that option goes away, or is made to be too expensive, it's going to continue to proliferate. It is the wave of the future. You know, it's the wave of the future, e-commerce.
Well, I think we've covered quite a bit here, and we could probably go on for the remainder of the symposium with tariffs and tariff talk. There's just so much to talk about. But I think right now is a good time for some Q&A if we have any questions from the audience.
Thank you, Eric. That was a really, really great presentation. I think Cindy's piece about the stages of grief, we've all kind of felt that throughout this, and it's really nice to have it put into words. Kylie, have you got any online questions you'd start with?
Yeah, we have one here that we can go ahead and start with. With the increasing amount of CBP mandated increase letters, how can brokers proactively vet importers that may be surety hopping?
We kind of touched on that a little, but yeah, I mean,
They could, well, number one, get their entry data, have the importer give them access to their ACE portals, and look at their ACE entry history. So the broker will be able to tell if there's past entries. Obviously, there was a different bond, and there is data out there. If customs issued a mandated increase and the broker knows about it, well, then they know there's been a previous bond. And if they're just requesting another $50,000 bond, there's something fishy going on there. So definitely the ACE data is number one, getting that information. Cindy, anything to add?
I would say, you know, call Roanoke, help them. I mean,
that's a great answer.
No, they're here to help you.
We didn't pay her
Yeah.
to say that either.
Yeah, they're here to help you. They have reports that they can run. They have that sufficiency tool online. Start being more proactive, but this is your partner. This is who can help you do that and be proactive. And then, you know, they can help you address these issues. One of the biggest impediments I see is, suddenly the boardroom of your clients, of the importers, become interested in what a surety bond is. And
Right.
it's really hard to explain to them sometimes. This is not our insurance, it's insurance for customs to make sure that we pay what we owe to them. And, you have to explain that multiple levels, to the CFO. So, they're adept at this. They've done this for 90 years now.
Yep.
So it's really good to have them in your corner.
We do a lot of education,
Yes.
whether we want to or not.
You
lot.
could also run an ABI query if you
Right.
catch it in time to see if there was a bond on
Bond
file.
previously.
Sometimes it won't show if it's been canceled, but you could try.
Excellent. We do have another here online, but first I want to open up to the room. Does anyone in the room have questions? Yeah, here, let me pop over. Can I pause you?
Not obviously be able to see. If we're not the broker of record, we won't be able to see the reports on your site, right? For those bonds.
For the insufficiency.
For
reports you're talking about?
insufficiency.
Yeah, that's correct. But if you're working with the importer, I mean, they could reach out to us directly and we could provide information to them, or they could at least give you permission to
Okay.
get information.
Thanks.
Any others here in the room? Okay, so this next one that we have here from online, what role do you see technology playing in helping custom brokers navigate the evolving enforcement landscape? And are there any specific tools or platforms that you would recommend?
I'm not in the business of recommending, specific platforms, but I will say there are FRNs out there that talk about the different programs and the different technologies that CBP has procured. Look into that and look into those companies. Call them, understand what they do and how it can supplement. 2 years ago, everyone was scared of AI. It's going to take our jobs. It's going to do the job for the broker. Even some companies were saying, we're going to take your job. We're going to automate all of this. And I think, that thinking has kind of fallen away. AI is a tool. I remember, when I started my career, ABI was this little thing that only took 01 entries and it gradually expanded. And there were companies who said, I am absolutely not going to go to that new technology. I'm going to file, I'm going to type out my entries. I'm going to take them to the customs house. I'm going to take it with a check. I'm going to pay that way because ABI is going to take my job. And those brokers are out of business, quite frankly. They did not survive, or they adopted the technology. AI is like that. All of these new tools are going to supplement the offerings that you have for your clients. They're going to allow you to be more integrated with them. They're going to allow you to have more visibility to their data. And if you are smart about that, you can then offer more services and become even more valuable to your clients. So yes, I think there is a GBI pilot that is going on, and don't let that fool you, because what that is the future of entry filing. If you think about it, because it was used by a company, they had forced labor detentions, and they overcame all of those presumptions for 48 shipments. Every time they get stopped, their goods would be detained, they'd file the paperwork, customs would let them go. So on the 49th shipment, they said, we're using this technology, we're to overcome the presumption. Why don't we send that to you proactively, so that you can make that determination before the goods get here? And that one was released without detention, and everyone after that has been released. And then Customs said, if we have that visibility, and the issue, how that worked is the importer had the tool and Customs had the tool, and they filed a number, a GBI number, to connect the two. So Customs already had the information, but they didn't know how to link it to that shipment. The broker had to transmit that. They also had visibility in that tool, and the importer had visibility in that tool. If you're smart, you're going to say, what's next? Customs is saying, what's next? We want to have visibility all the way down.
Yeah.
And each of those levels will have a number. And that will become a supplement to what entry filing is today. It's going to not replace it, it's going to supplement that for larger clients who are able to invest in that technology. And eventually, everyone, it's kind of like CT-PAT, everyone will have to do it because they want to get the benefits that it will bring, or they're going to be pressured into that. So there's all kinds of tools out there that can help you do your job. Be creative in how you're looking at that, because customs is actively going out saying, we have this ACE system, we don't want to enhance it, we don't want to pour any more money into it. What can I bolt on to that makes our job easier, gives us more visibility, and we can then move forward? So technology companies are meeting with CBP every week and pitching ideas, and CBP is taking some of them, and they have more money to do that. None for ACE, but all these bolt-on tools, oh yeah, they're going gangbusters on that.
All the duty collections needs to pay for something,
Right, yeah.
right?
Awesome.
New
Thank
desk.
you.
We've got a few more minutes left here for questions. If anyone else in the audience has anything.
Hi, guys. Thanks for the panel. We talked a little bit about vetting importer clients and especially foreign importers of record. One of the big, burdens that I'm seeing right now is vetting clients' right to make entry. There are, foreign freight forwarders, marketplaces, companies. I'm not sure if they're a foreign freight forwarder or a marketplace, and now they're talking about first sale. What do you see from customs or, potentially on the surety side on how do we, expeditiously look at these companies and vet their right to make entry? I think the latest guide from customs was 2003. So just curious if you guys have an updated opinion on that.
I think right to make entry is complicated. You're right. It's one of the most complicated areas, and it's more complicated because there are some circumstances, like everyone knows, I used to work for couriers, and the courier companies were a intermediary consignee that had rights that were assigned to them that they could then appoint a customs broker, and they would appoint their customs broker who was in-house, of course. And that gave them the right to make entry. Then it had to be on their bond. So, that's also why a lot of those courier companies serve as the importer of record, because it facilitates that process. As far as for sale goes, I'm not the expert on for sale. I'd suggest you save that for Lenny's panel. He can probably answer that a little bit more than I could. But I think there was a recent court case that talked about first sale, or a ruling that talked about first sale and what the requirements were for the valuation piece of that. It didn't necessarily touch on right to make entry, but you have to go through word by word by word the guidance that was given. And also there's an informed compliance publication that talks about right to make entry, and one that talks about first sale. They knitted together, make a pretty good guide on how to address that. But I'm seeing, tons and tons and tons of calls about valuation and first sale and B2B to C, and what the difference of B2B to C is versus B2C or a B2B with first sale. So there's options out there that you can walk through, but you have to have the right to make entry. And I think customs brokers are smart to ask that question up front if it's not evident who the importer is and how they are tied with who is making the entry. And that's really part of, I think, our job as customs brokers under responsible supervision and control, is to understand how your client has the authority to make entry. If there's no evident link to that, ask some questions, understand what they're doing here. And that means at some point you might have to say, I'm sorry, I can't do your business. And I think more and more customs brokers are going to be in that situation where they're going to have to be a little more picky about who their clients are. Before, we're like, hey, come on in. If it's, if it's a problem, it's on the importer. And now I think we're seeing that customs is more interested in customs brokers now, not, more than the importer, but we're going to have to be a little more professional and a little more business oriented in how we're making decisions on who we're going to do business with.
It's really part of the broker vetting process, right?
Yes,
Importer vetting,
should be.
yeah.
Great.
And that's what we rely on our customs brokers to to know all that information, before we write the bonds.